It's kind of wild to think that two of the most influential letters ever written didn't come from a palace or some fancy university. They came from a prison cell. Today, we're going to explore just that, how a prisoner's unique perspective can unlock this profound secret to joy and really radical transformation.
So let me just throw this at you. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a heavy statement, right? What kind of person in what state of mind actually says something like that?
Your first thought might be, okay, that's got to be a king who's just won a massive victory. Or maybe a philosopher who's achieved some kind of ultimate inner peace. But no, not even close. The person who wrote those words was a prisoner, in chains, with a future that was completely up in the air. And this is the paradox we're going to unpack today.
So let's dive right into the heart of this mystery. We're calling this first part the prisoner's paradox. We're going to look at the massive, almost unbelievable gap between this guy's grim reality and his ridiculously positive message. I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got the author Paul's actual physical reality. He talks about his bonds, his imprisonment over and over. He could literally be executed. But then, on the other side, his message is just jam-packed with words like joy, confidence, rejoice, peace. He even has the nerve to say that his being in prison has actually helped spread his message. I mean, how is that even possible?
Well, that brings us to the first letter he wrote from prison, which is basically the instruction manual for this whole counterintuitive way of thinking. So let's get into it. Philippians, a true philosophy of joy.
So, where does this incredible joy come from? Well, Paul says it has nothing to do with just ignoring your terrible circumstances. Instead, the absolute core of his philosophy is this radical call to humility. It's about completely rewiring the way you think.
And to show us what he means, Paul lays out this powerful example of Christ, breaking it down into this four-step process of emptying oneself. It starts at the highest possible point, being in the very form of God. Then, step 2, willingly taking the form of a servant. Step 3, humbling himself. And the final step, becoming obedient all the way to death. This is the blueprint for that new mindset.
And this right here, this is the result of that mindset. And notice, it's not a suggestion, it's a direct command. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. He says it twice just to make sure you get it. This isn't about being happy because things are going great. It's a deep-seated joy that comes from this new way of thinking, a joy that he can feel even while sitting in a prison cell.
So, how do you make this practical? Well, Paul describes this mindset in a really cool way. He calls it a completely new accounting system for life. It's about taking a hard look at your life's ledger and totally rethinking what you count as a profit and what you count as a loss.
And Paul says it himself right here. This is a guy who had every reason to be proud. His background, his education, his status. But he says, but what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Think about that. His entire value system just gets turned completely on its head. Everything he used to proudly put in the gain column has been moved over to the loss column.
Okay, so that's the big idea, the philosophy. But does it actually work in the messy, real world? Well, that brings us to our next section, which is this incredibly high-stakes, deeply personal case study. We're calling it Philemon, Appeal for a Brother.
Now, this letter might be super short, but trust me, the drama is massive. You've got 3 key players here. First, there's Philemon. He's the master. Then there's Onesimus, his runaway slave, who, in a twist of fate, found Paul and became a Christian. And then you have Paul, acting as the mediator, who's about to ask Philemon to do something absolutely unthinkable.
And to really get how high the stakes are, you have to understand the context. In the Roman Empire, a master had absolute, unquestioned power over a runaway slave. The legal punishment could be brutal, even up to and including death. So Onesimus is walking back into a situation of extreme, life-threatening danger.
And this is exactly why Paul's request is so breathtakingly radical. He isn't just writing a quick note asking for a slap on the wrist. He is trying to completely shatter and redefine the entire power dynamic, the whole human relationship between a master and a slave.
And then comes the bombshell. Paul tells Philemon to welcome Onesimus back, not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved. This is it. This is the philosophy of Philippians put into action. He's asking Philemon to stop seeing Onesimus as his property and start seeing him as family.
But what's so brilliant is how he does it.
Paul has the authority to just command Philemon, but he doesn't. Instead, he appeals to him based on love. He reminds him of his own situation as Paul the aged, and now also a prisoner. He affectionately calls Onesimus his son. He even offers to personally pay back any money Onesimus might have cost him. It's just a masterclass in persuasion that comes from relationship, not from pulling rank.
All right, so let's pull all these threads together in our final section. The legacy of the prison letters.
Honestly, this might be the best way to think about it. The letter to the Philippians, that was the big, beautiful theory about finding joy through humility. But the letter to Philemon, that was the final exam. It was the theory being put to the test in a real, messy human relationship where everything was on the line. And so, that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? These letters, written by a man literally in chains, a man stripped of all worldly power, created a framework that completely turned social structures on their head. So the question for us is, how can these same ideas, born from a place of complete powerlessness, continue to challenge our own assumptions about power, status, and how we relate to each other today?